Okay, hello, my name is Annie Roper, and today I will be educating you on the causes. Oh no, it's gonna be backwards. It wasn't backwards. Of the American Revolution. So, let's go. So, we all know that the American Revolution was one of the most important things to ever happen to our country. In fact, if not the most important, because without it, we would not be a country at all. It took place between 1775 and 1783, and within that time, we gained our independence. It fought a lot of wars. I definitely cannot tell you why I just said wars. It was definitely battles. So, the first thing that began the revolution is known as the French and Indian War. The reason why it's called the French and Indian War is because the British and the colonies rallied different Native American troops to help them fight and against the French, because that's who they were fighting against. So tensions were initially stirred between the British and the French because the French started trying to expand into the Ohio River Valley, and they were like, nah, y'all can't do that. So obviously the British and the colonies alike were not happy with this. So then a bunch of battles were fought, and then eventually in the year 1756, the British ended up declaring war. And that's definitely how you spell declares, so love that. So then, eventually, in 1757, Prime Minister William Pitt comes along and he decides that he wants to fund Prussia in Europe to fight the French, and he wants to fund the colonies with money to fight here. So essentially, he just kind of gives all of Britain's money to fund those things. So, shockingly, after a little while, Britain is out of money, and they end up in debt. Once France realizes that they can't win, they surrender, and then Spain allies with them, and Great Britain ends up shifting their focus to Europe to fight them. So yes. So, as we all know, all wars eventually have to come to an end, and this war ended up coming to an end with the 1963 Treaty of Paris. From this treaty, England gained Canada from France, and Florida from Spain, and then Spain was granted Louisiana. So yeah, so then what this meant was that with no other presence of any other countries in what would soon be the United States, that meant that lands west of the Mississippi River were now open to expansion. So, now that we know how the war ended, we must now reflect on what happened because of it. So as I said earlier, Britain is now very, very, very heavily in debt. They are in debt, in fact, at about 122 million pounds, which translates, give me a second, this is kind of hard, 24,795,557.25 pounds today. So a lot. It was known as a staggering amount of money for the time period, because it was. The king knows that this is not okay, so he turns all his attention to finding a way to pay off the debt. Great Britain was having a lot of trouble keeping the peace between the Native Americans and the colonists, so they decided to keep an army in America. They also wanted more control over their empire, so they started carrying out more laws and regulations regarding trade and such, but the colonists, being the rebels that they are, ended up finding ways to evade these laws. So the Proclamation of 1763 cut off all colonial expansion west of the Allegheny Mountains, and it angered colonists wishing to continue to settle, especially George Washington. But Great Britain believed that they should pay for all of Britain's debt. So, now for the part that essentially all of us know about, the tax acts. So, what these were, in 1764, Parliament passed the Sugar Act, which placed a tax on molasses, which ended up affecting the colonies. Then, in 1765, they passed the Stamp Act, which placed a tax on all public goods, all legal documents, all stuff like that, and it affected everybody, and it made everybody really mad. The next factor of the American Revolution, clearly I am a witch because my glasses just disappeared. So thanks for that. Were the Intolerable Acts. So what these were a set of 5 laws that more tightly regulated the colonists, and they were originally called the Coercive Acts, but due to how much the colonists hated them, they renamed them the Intolerable Acts. First was the Quebec Act, and this named the Roman Catholic Church as the sole religious body in Quebec. Not only was it the only religious body in Quebec, it also acted as a governing body, and it made decisions for the colony. Next, the Boston Port Act. This law simply cut off all trade, exporting, importing from the Boston port. Next, the Administration of Justice Act. So what this did was basically help British officials evade any sort of like justice having to go to trial in the colonies. They were allowed to go on trial all the way in Great Britain or just to another colony. So not just the colonies in general, but whatever colony they were in. Next, the Quartering Act. This act just gave British officials the right to be housed in any unoccupied building. They could be housed in any building that they needed to be housed in. And lastly of the Intolerable Acts was the Massachusetts Government Act. So what this one did was it took away Massachusetts charter that they made in 1691 and replaced it with a military government and put General Thomas Gage in charge of that military government. Found my glasses. Next, we have the response to the acts. So, one of the responses that you may definitely have heard about was the Sons of Liberty. They were possibly the most notable. The Sons of Liberty was a response to specifically the Stamp Act. Its actual origins are not like completely known, but it's said that it originated when during a debate in Parliament, Stamp Act activist Charles Townshend made a negative comment about the colonists, and then Isaac Barr, who was a member of Parliament, then stood to defend the colonists and called them Sons of Liberty. So, guess the name stuck, huh? Ultimately, we know the Sons of Liberty best for the Boston Tea Party, which was their doing, the throwing of the tea. And their motto was no taxation without representation. Lastly, number 7, we have Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Now, Common Sense was important for a couple reasons. The first being that it was the first pamphlet to ever be published. It was pretty monumental, clearly, because pamphlets are really good. It was published in 1776, and it contained this dude, I think it's going to be offensive, it contained Thomas Paine's ideas of what it would mean to be independent for the colonists. Previously to Common Sense being published, many colonists just kind of considered themselves aggrieved Britons, and they hadn't really like formulated the idea of America being its own country. And it is said that his views and his ideas set forth the American Revolution, rolling into what it became, and then led to our independence. So, to conclude, this has been the causes of the American Revolution. Thanks for watching. Bye.